Welcome everyone to another Canada Life public webinar. My name is Ilana Corbel and I'm joined today by my colleague Kimberly Ferris. We are members of our Canada Life organizational health team. This year, the Canadian Mental Health Association deemed May 5th to the 11th as Canadian Mental Health Week. In recognition of this upcoming week, we have invited two experts to join us today to address our topic. You can do the hard things, how to change what no longer serves you. We believe this topic to be top of mind for many Canadians. If you would like to watch this presentation in French, please click the link below to be taken to the French audio and visual. I would like to begin today's event with a land acknowledgement. Canada Life's head office is in Winnipeg, the ancestral lands of Cree, Nakota, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Métis people, and in the heart of Treaty 1 territory, signed between the Crown and Cree and Anishinaabe peoples and the homeland of the Métis Nation. Canada Life acknowledges the harms of the past, and we respect the history, people, and land in the areas we live and operate in. We are committed to building relationships and moving forward in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, guided by shared principles of respect, equality, and collaboration. I will be introducing our speakers in a moment, but first I would like to mention that as you listen, you're welcome to ask questions in either English or French. Depending on what sort of device you have joined us on, you can either submit your questions directly on the screen. The box will appear either at the side of your screen or underneath it, or you can go to slido.com and enter hashtag CLWellbeing in the field that says hashtag enter code here. We have a team of moderators who will review and publish the questions as they come in. So keep an eye on Slido. You can give a question a thumbs up if you're interested in it, and we will prioritize those questions in the time we have towards the end of today's event. As I have mentioned, we have two experts today that will explore the feelings associated with change. How to set expectations with yourself, how to break change into smaller steps and reposition change so that you can remain motivated throughout as you embark on change. We will be reserving time near the end of the session, giving listeners a chance to ask questions in Slido. As always, we are joined by Marianne Baton. Marianne is the Director of Strategy and Collaboration for Workplace Strategies for Mental Health. Please join me in welcoming Marianne, who will introduce our amazing guest speaker today, Dr. Daniels. Marianne, over to you.
Oh, thanks, Alana, and welcome everyone. We all know that change is a constant in life, whether it chooses us or we choose it. And every moment of every day, you're making decisions. When you think about it, your career, your relationships, how you manage your time, your finances, even the way you choose to spend your vacations, every aspect of your life carries a choice. And here's the hard truth. What you don't change, you choose. If you stay in a job that drains you, if you hold on to a routine that no longer serves you, if you put off making decisions that could improve the quality of your life, those are still choices. And sometimes when we don't make change, life will do it for us. We might get laid off, we might have a relationship breakup, something else happens, and suddenly we're forced to adapt. But wouldn't it be better if we could take control before we're pushed, to be the driver instead of the passenger? And we've all had change thrust upon us. Anybody who's made it this far in life has had change thrust upon them, and my guest is no exception. Today, I'm really thrilled to welcome the esteemed author and occupational health and safety professional, Dr. I. David Daniels. Dr. Daniels has become a valued friend and colleague of mine, and I knew that you would enjoy his wisdom and his experiences with doing hard things. And you're going to hear about those. He's just released his book. I just happen to have a copy here. Psychosocial Hazards Are Real, a guide to understanding non-physical safety hazards. And on the evening of May 28th, Dr. Daniels will be here in Canada because he is from Georgia. down south of us. But he's going to do a book launch at a different big book list at 779 Bathurst in Toronto. Now, I have to tell you, because I just read the book, and the first chapter is so honest and raw. It startled me, which is interesting because what he does after that is he explains psychosocial hazards to us in a really easy to understand way. He talks about the work environment, work design, interactions with other people, and how they impact our psychological health and safety. You got to read this book if you're interested at all in that topic. So, welcome, my friend. I bet you had to choose change many times in your life, and I bet it was thrust upon you. So we want to learn from your mistakes, from your challenges, from your successes. Can we start with the changes you experienced as a young child?
Well, yeah, and Marianne, thank you so much for inviting me to this conversation. There's a lot that I could say, but when we talk about change as it impacted me as a child, it was rather constant. I can recall living in 12 different places before I graduated high school. I switched schools. We moved from Seattle to St. Louis, Missouri, to East St. Louis, Illinois, and then back to Seattle, and all this before I started high school. For me, change happened so often that it almost became normal. I didn't realize until I was older that not everybody did that. As a matter of fact, I live now in a home that I've lived in. This is the house I've lived in for the longest period of my life. I had never lived in the same house for more than 5 years until I moved here. And so what I would say is that change became so almost routine that I didn't even recognize it as change. It was just the way things were. Fortunately, I had a mom, because I've never met my dad. I had a mom who helped me feel like this was okay. I didn't really realize things were as difficult as they were outside looking in, because she kind of had this way of helping us, feel okay about what was going on. The fact that, we may not have had as much as everyone else. We didn't, at least in our home, it didn't feel that way. It didn't feel bad. It felt like it was life. And, there was love in our home. There was, we had lots of challenges. But some of the challenges, again, I didn't really realize until I started getting exposed to other people. So again, change was life for me.
So 2 really important points you just made. One of the reasons that change is hard for some people is because they don't anticipate it. They think everything's going to go along the way it always has and nothing's going to change. So that anticipation of change is huge. But the other thing that your mom did is she helped you to accept that it is what it is, not, oh, this is horrible, we have to move again, this is terrible, she helped you to accept it, which is fabulous, because I'm sure it wasn't easy for her, and yet she did this for you. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. Again, I was born when she was 14 years old. She had 5 of us by the time she was 21. She didn't give us up for adoption. She didn't, send us to live with other people. As a matter of fact, as I got older and we met, folks of her generation, they always talk about how we are always neat and clean, and there's all these kids basically following a teenager around. I am closer in age to my mom than I am to my youngest sister. How she did it, I have absolutely no idea. I'm not sure how she did it, and I just don't know how she did it, but I feel blessed that she was able to do it, and come to find out she had supporters as well. I had an aunt and my grandmother who behind the scenes were really kind of the wind beneath her wings, kind of helping her negotiate some of this. But your point is so well taken. A lot of this, what we perceive to be as change, is misaligned expectation. Who told you it was going to be that way all of the time?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Such a good point.
Mhm.
And what about as you started to get older and you began your career at McDonald's and all of the things that followed?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I got my first job when I was 11 throwing newspapers.
Mhm.
I, I always worked. I worked because there were some things that I wanted and my mom wasn't able to provide them. And she said, well, I can do this, but if you want to do more, you'll probably have to do something on your own. So I learned this kind of, independent, self-reliance type of thing pretty early because, again, that's just the way it was. If I wanted something extra than what she would provide, she says, I can't do it, but you're welcome to go do it on your own. And she allowed me to do that. I mean, I can recall me and my brother, we'd be out hustling. That's what we, kind of a little this, a little that. We had our paper routes and I worked at fast food restaurants and all that type of thing. And I moved out of the house when I was 17 because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. I didn't think I was supposed to live in my mom's basement until I was 30. Now, I say that kind of half jokingly because I think things were a little different, in terms of the economy and all of that. But on the other hand, I was just kind of expected that I was going to do this on my own at some point. I thought I could fall back on her sometimes, but most of the time I knew I couldn't. And if I wanted X, Y, or Z, I had to go out there and kind of make it happen for myself. And, it turned out to be a way of life.
Yeah. Yeah. I also started to work at a paper route at 10 and have worked ever since. But like you, I didn't see it as a hardship. I actually thought that I was privileged because my friends didn't have any money of their own. They couldn't do anything. Yeah. So it's really interesting. And then tell me a bit about some of the changes that you experience now you're in the workforce.
Oh, yes. So I would say my career, I should say, started when I was 21. I had jobs before that, but I had a career about right at 21 years old. I got a phone call the day after my 21st birthday by a hero of mine, now retired Fire Chief Claude Harris. He was the first Black person ever hired as a firefighter in the city of Seattle in 1959. And he called me. He was the chief of personnel at the time. And I'll never forget that, it was on a Friday. And he asked me, did I want to be a firefighter? I said, yes. He said, can you start next Wednesday? So I had to quit the 2 jobs I was working at the time and had no idea really whether this would even work out. I mean, frankly, had I known more, I might have been more afraid. Most people, a lot of people, I won't say most, but a lot of people don't even make it through the training. And I found that out later that it's a really rigorous process. And not only is it rigorous, though, it's kind of set up for some people to fail. And I was actually one of them, but I didn't know that. I didn't know it was set up for me to fail. So I went out to succeed and it worked. I really enjoyed the rather objective way they said, look, if you're here for 4 years, you can test for promotion. And if you score high enough on the promotion, we'll promote you. And then there was all these steps and it was really objective for me. And I liked that. I also liked the fact that I wasn't held back because I was young. Because in all my other jobs, I was told, oh, you can't be a leader because you're too young. I don't believe in the tenure competence myth. Just because you're older or more tenured doesn't mean you know something, but also conversely, just because you're younger doesn't mean you don't. Either you know it or you don't. Either you can do it or you can't. And and if I wanted to learn something, I'd set out to try to learn it through whatever method or means that was available to me. And I ended up being, while I was with the city of Seattle in 28 different spots in 20 years. I didn't stay in a particular assignment more than about 3 years. So it was just, and again, some of that connected back to my childhood. And I didn't realize that till later. I was okay with moving because I was used to it. They'll send me over here and send me over there. And I didn't complain. And I didn't like all of them, but most of them, I felt like I could learn something. And I looked at it, Marianne, similar to the way you did. I go, well, I have the advantage of learning this thing about this part of the department or this thing. So there isn't much about the fire rescue service that I didn't know something about by the time I, had, and again, I was in my late 30s and I figure I knew most of it because of the change.
So that's another great point, David, is the idea of adapting your mind to not resist the change and say, now they want me to do it, now I got to do it, but to adapt it to say, hey, this is an opportunity. I could learn from it. I could learn I don't want to do this again. Or I could learn this is a great pathway to something. But either way, you're going to learn, right? And to be able to adapt our mind to change. Dr. David Burns talks about the reasons we resist change. And he said, quite often it's because we feel that the change is not going to be in our best interest. And we then can make it so. And so if we look at change and say, what could I learn from this? How could I grow from this? What will this give me? Which it sounds like you spent a lot of your working life doing that.
Yeah.
But talk to me a bit about when you might have resisted change or regretted change or felt challenged by change.
To be quite honest, the occasions when I resisted change were fairly limited, but a lot of it had to do with how what was going on around me affected me directly. It's not really even the change itself; it's how do I feel about it. And again, there were just some of the changes that it just didn't seem like it was affecting me well. And even in situations where it would seem like this should go better than this, it would seem I should feel better in this circumstance, but I don't. So there's an inconsistency between what looks like it should be great, looks like it should be, and people outside looking in, oh, that looks like that's a really neat situation. But to me, I didn't feel the same way. And particularly after I made chief officer, I thought that was the thing. I spent years, and again, I got promoted to battalion chief at 34 years old, which is one of the 4 or 5 youngest people in the history of the organization. But once I got there, it felt different. It felt like I didn't feel like I was really enjoying what I was doing because I thought I could get there. And again, my expectation was I'll be able to really make a real impact, and I couldn't. I'll be able to do a bunch of good things, and I couldn't. So I found the closer I got to the top of the organization, the more restrictive it felt because of the culture of the organization itself, not because of the people. The fire rescue service, at least some of the stories that I heard, hopefully it's changed a little bit, but probably not, was 200 years of tradition unimpeded by progress. That was a motto that people had. And just that, that whole kind of mindset, once I thought, that's not that big of a deal, because once I get there and when I get in that spot, it's going to be, but when I got there, it was true. It was embedded into the systems. It was embedded into the way that people did things. So it's a kind of a weird, the environment changed, but not really. And in my case, it didn't change as much as I thought it would, back to our expectations. I thought it was because I now had the power to make the difference. I really didn't have the power because, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yeah. So now you're in the midst of a change that it hasn't worked out. And, some people would just basically sort of say, well, it is what it is. And they start to go with this broken system. You didn't do that.
No.
So can you share a bit, if we're in a change that we feel compromises our integrity, that, doesn't align with our values, then how do we make choices at that point in our life that we don't stay stuck in a bad situation?
Well, as one of those Coveyisms, Stephen Covey talks about the difference between our circle of influence and our circle of concern. And I had opportunity to stumble around that concept, many years ago. And I spent a lot of time working on my circle of influence, the things that I can do something about. Because while the world around me, and I'll mention this because it pops to mind. you have two choices in life. You can either evolve or become extinct. Those are the two choices that we have. And if you don't evolve and say, it's just going to be this way, be this way, be this way, you probably, as an individual, won't last long anyway. A lot of these systems will last, but the people in them won't last unless you can figure out a way to adapt. So I try to figure out, what can I do to change me so I can either, and I have to adapt to some things, but in other cases, I had to decide that I'm just not going to do this. I'm going to do something else that's adjacent to this. A lot of my involvement, particularly in safety, was because the system that I was in, I didn't feel it was as effective as it should be. I didn't think, it had enough controls to protect people's safety. So I started looking myself for other opportunities. So I go do things outside of the organization. I go into my own pocket to do it. I go to training on my own because I was trying to meet a need that I had. I'm not sure if everybody had the same one or not. I can't speak for them. But for me, I wanted more than the system that I was in was giving me at the time. So rather than just give up altogether, I went to pursue what is going to work for me. And now I held on to the situations I was in for, I didn't want to just totally just dive out there because, there's some financial considerations for doing that. But
you have to pay the bills.
Got to pay the bills. Yeah. Until you pay the bill off. So it was always about knowing what I needed and what was going to work for me, and where that system wasn't meeting. Instead of criticizing and say how bad it was and how bad the people were, find out where it is. It's okay that I don't fit some places, but there are other places where I will. So that's became my strategy. And yet, even when they started, if it changed a little bit more than I was willing to accept or felt comfortable in, I go like, okay, well, I need to find a space that is going to be safe for me, an environment that is going to be safe for me. And that's how I survived.
Yeah, it's such an important point because we talk about change. You should be able to adapt to change. You should be able to manage change. But sometimes our integrity, our values are such that change has to be resisted or managed in a way because of the moral injury that happens, which, once I feel that my values are compromised, that my integrity is compromised, that's a very serious psychological harm to me.
Yes.
And can you talk a bit about if you saw that in the workplace for yourself or others, psychological harm?
Oh, yes. I can talk about, so I've only worked in the private sector a couple of times. I'm mostly a public sector guy.
Yeah.
And my last private sector, both of my private sector experiences I didn't enjoy either one of them. I didn't. They made good money, but what I didn't enjoy was the constant focus on making money and treating people like disposable paper cups. Particularly the last one, it was really, it's just a big multinational corporation that's got, folks all over the world. And I was in a safety role at a particular place. But as a matter of fact, my description, and they didn't really like this, I told them that they were running the place like a plantation. And I meant that because I saw workers who had holes in their shoes and the company would complain that I, as a safety professional, made sure that they had shoes. And the way I looked at it, I don't really care about your budget that much when it's going to injure and potentially kill people. I honestly. So ultimately, that wasn't a fit for me. It wasn't a fit. I wasn't willing to blame every injury on the worker because it wasn't their fault that they were never trained to do that safely. That's not their fault. That's the company's fault. But at least here in the US and a lot of countries around the world, most of the responsibility to keep people safe is on the employer because you created the business, you exposed people to the risk, either physical or psychosocial. You did that. You hired that person, you trained them or did not. So the responsibility is really more on you than it is on them. And so it was very difficult for me to accept that. And I spoke up about it. It got me kind of beat up a little bit, but not not too bad because I went into it with a sense of resiliency around that. This is the way I feel about safety. Everything that I do business wise or before we like this conversation has already gotten there. I'm going to talk about safety before it's all over because it's a core value to me. I don't think it is for everybody. That's not a criticism, but for me it is. And I'm not going to compromise that. I'm not going to watch people be injured and killed with reckless abandon and say nothing about it. That's just not me. So some people probably won't hire me or won't connect with me because I'm a little over the top on that, because I don't think people should die either physically or emotionally at work.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And yeah, to go back to exactly what you're saying, your resilience, your change. I'm thinking about even you writing a book for the first time in your life, getting it published, jumping through a lot of hoops to do it, and not enjoying all of them. But
Right.
What is in your mind as you're doing these hard things that allows you to go through it with grace, with integrity, and be able to stay balanced? Because one of the things I think about dealing with change, if we don't deal with it well, everybody else has to breathe in our secondhand stress.
That's yes, so true. Again, another Coveyism: begin with the end in mind. And so this is a conversation I had with particularly my youngest son, because as I, had kids and it is really important for people to think about the consequences of their own decisions. Because a lot of the stress comes up is that I do stuff, but I don't really think about what the consequences even might be. I just do it because it felt like something to do. I tend to be very intentional about virtually everything I do. As a matter of fact, I have a pretty decent relationship with my future self. And if my self 10 years from now is going to hate this, my present self ain't going to do it either. And so when I thought about even writing a book, I go, there are things that I'm sharing in this book that I've never really talked about publicly before. That's why I'm also very cautious. I'm not trying to throw rocks at people. I'm simply discussing how it felt to me. I'm sharing, these are my views about this. And I'm very careful not to, I could name names and call people out, but I don't. Now, I do call out people who have done things that were really positive, but there's some things I don't call people's names because I don't think that's of value. I'm talking about how it felt to me and how I experienced it. I don't know what their intent was. I don't have any idea. I heard that once as well. We judge ourselves based on our intent. We judge other people based on what they do, and then we assign intent to it because we can't possibly really know what's in their heart. So, but again, what has helped me through a lot of these is to have a realistic, at least realistic, in my view, an objective view about what the consequences are going to be. The potential was I could spend a bunch of money and write a book and nobody will buy one, and I was good with that. It was more important that I write it than how people felt about it. It was something I wanted to get out into the world, and and past that, I can't control how people see it. I am hopeful, and again, it's written in such a way. The middle part of the book is kind of like a reference because psychosocial hazards are unique to the individual. So I can't. It's not a how-to. If you do this exactly, it is. This is what the hazard is. This is how it could affect you in general, and it might, but it's not an all-knowing, all-seeing, but somebody had to start the conversation, in this way, and I have tried to.
Yeah. So when you made the big change, right, from your previous career in the fire service and out of that, how did you manage that? You got to the pinnacle of that career. Yeah. And then you decided to step away. And I know you said some of it is your integrity. Some of it was, I'm not able to do what I thought I wanted to do. But what did you tell yourself to say, I'm going to make this huge change in my life?
Well, again, similar to lots of folks, it kind of came down to how much physical or how much emotional and physical stress do I want to take to continue to do something that I think I like? There's a thing called effort reward balance. And it started to get out of balance. It did. I started losing my hair in my 30s. And it wasn't just, I think stress had something to do with it. I financially, I made a lot of money, but I wasn't worth anything. My net worth was, matter of fact, I had a negative net worth when I took my first fire chief's job. So all of the stuff that I thought, it really wasn't happening anyway. So I, again, just started to take a more objective look at what is this really doing for me? What is this? How does this really make me feel? I found out when things got really tough, a lot of the people who said they were family, they kind of left, and they weren't around. My immediate close family was there, but a lot of the quote unquote professional people I'd helped, they were kind of like not really there anyway. So instead of getting, and I did have a period of, a little depression and some of that. Thank God for therapy. But I had to do it because my life was not going to be better simply doing what I'd always done. And I took the passion, similar passion, into something that is certainly connected. So it's not like I totally dropped my interest in helping people. I just want to help in a different way. And the first person I want to help is me. So my job as an occupational health and safety professional is not to make other people safe. It's to live a safe life myself and to be an example and to see if other folks might want to do it, because it's kind of cool when you can live a safe life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And can you just, for people that aren't as familiar, we know what it means not to get physically injured, but what's a psychologically healthy and safe life?
Well, I have to tell you that my psychological health and safety emotional journey has only been about 5 years, because it started with my research, and it really and the research actually picked up after I left my last W-2 job, and it took a few years to detox from that, because I'd been in so many of these, you just got to go in there and just put up with it. And even in cases where I don't really want to do this, but I think I have to, but to be able to step away from that and to not be in that environment, I just feel better as a human being. I don't have a lot of days where I'm stressed because I don't put myself in those circumstances. Now, I'm not saying my life's perfect or anything like that. And there are certainly things that I certainly can't control that, cause me to get, concerned, but I just don't do it. I mean, is that going to be really toxic and really conflict filled? And I just don't want to do it. I mean, again, if you want to do it, great, but it's just not something that I want to do. And I seek out opportunities to be around people who are that way, and in environments are that way, and in circumstances that are that way. A lot of my friends are people like you who live other places, and I don't even see all that often in person, but I feel I'm connected to other folks who feel like this doesn't have to be really ugly and toxic. Why can't we have a wonderful, hopeful, upbeat? Why can't we do that? If that means I have to have relationships through Zoom and, Microsoft Teams, that's okay. I'd rather do that than be around these really, what I feel to be a horribly toxic situations. And again, that's based on my view of it. It may be great for the other person, but I focus a lot on how does it feel to me? And if it feels good and it feels right and it feels upstanding, that's what I try to find myself doing.
Yeah, you reminded me of something you said to me before. It starts with, if you condone it,
you own it.
You own it. And so often we don't think we're condoning the toxic people in our lives, the toxic situations in our lives. But if we just accept it, then we've made a choice to stay there, to stay in that relationship. And I know it's easier said than done. Somebody said to me, well, what if that toxic relationship is your family, your own child or your partner? But it's, do you engage in the toxicity, or can you make different choices? And it's always fascinating to me. You say you've only been in psychological health and safety for 5 years, but in your book, you talk about that you were experiencing it all your life.
Yeah.
And it's there, right?
right? You can hear me. I'm not sure if you can see me because I think my camera did something weird, but I'll keep talking.
Okay.
Yeah, interestingly, um, I there's what you're experiencing and what you know about what you're experiencing. And a lot of times I didn't really have the language to describe what's going on. The language kind of came later. And again, some of it was through research, some of it was through, my life experience or what have you. But it's an evolution. All of this is like a journey that we're on. It's and you made a really interesting point. It really is hard to do. The question is, how much pain do you want to suffer while you're not doing it, though? Yeah, of course it's hard, but the pain associated with staying the same and staying in the same place and kind of putting up, I agree wholeheartedly that sometimes even with family, there's a thing called family estrangement that, sometimes that whoever they are, that child, that parent, that cousin, that uncle, we're still related, but we don't do well together. So it's okay. It doesn't make you or them a bad person. It means that is not compatible. So, but people keep doing it and keep being damaged by that. And then they pass that harm, they pass that pain on to other people. So it's about doing what gives you peace and joy and contentment. And sometimes that means that, I've been through a divorce. I have relatives that we just don't really click all that well. I believe that I love them, but we don't have that kind of relationship where we can be in close proximity for all kinds of reasons. So it's life. It's life. It doesn't mean that life is over. It just means that life is going to be different.
And it's just the way that you look at it. We were having a conversation yesterday and talking about how you can control the way that you're triggered, because often we're triggered because of past experiences and then we react, right? When we get that behavior again, whether it's crying or passive aggressive or whatever it is. And somebody said, well, how do you deal with it? I said, well, you understand what the thoughts are that are promoting that trigger, and then you choose a different way of looking at it. So mine's passive aggressive, right? So when someone's passive aggressive, my triggered emotion is anger, that you're trying to manipulate me. But because I know it's not about that person, it's about my history, I can have the trigger and then say, this person is maybe afraid to tell me the truth. Right. Because they don't feel safe and I can make them feel safer. And someone said, yeah, but that's a lot of hard work. And someone else said, yes, but so is suffering, yes. Right? So is damaging relationships. So are the repetitive negative thoughts. So yes, change can be hard, but not changing is hard if it's not serving you, right?
Yes. That. Oh boy, so many gems. It is the last couple of words that you used, if it's not serving you. And I think that there are a lot of people who are living their lives box checking, doing the things that they think they're supposed to do, and they don't feel good about many of them. I'm in a job, I don't like it. I'm in a relationship with someone that is, abusive to me, whatever it is. So how long are you going to put up with that? I particularly as, I've done the podcast and talked to people about psychological health and safety, and you hear people talk about their jobs and how it's just horrible and how the people are treating me. And then there's a part of me that asks, so at what point does it become enough for you? And yeah, that may mean maybe I don't make as much money. Maybe my house isn't as big. Maybe I have to live in a van down by the river. But I would rather be in a van by the river and be at peace and be, and my life's okay. I follow some people on YouTube. That's what they've decided to do, because they don't want to deal with the stress of the toxic work environment that they were in. And I so respect that type of decision. but you got to give yourself options. That may mean upskilling. That may mean trying something that you've not done before, because it is worth it. So so it can serve you as opposed to you serving it.
Yeah. I've worked with people, David, where they say the workload is so much, it's so much pressure. I can't do this anymore. And when I talk to them about it, they're not working overtime. They're just going in for their 7.5 hour, but they're stressed all day. And I said, well, what if you just made the shift in thinking? I'm going to go in, I'm going to do the best I can, and then I'm going to go home. Right. You can let your boss know, this is what I'm going to do. Here's what I can get done. And in every single case, their productivity went up, their stress went down, and work became a completely different thing. And right. It's all in how we see it. Because I can't work faster when I'm stressed.
That's right.
And regardless what someone says, if they want to threaten me or they want to pressure me, that's not going to help me work faster. So if I can let that go, and those are things, again, it seems like it's hard work, but once you get that mindset, now you were blessed with being born with it. It just is what it is. I'll deal with it. And, that's great. But for some of us, we had to learn it the hard way.
Right.
Yeah. So I know we need to stop chatting as if there's nobody else in the room and open it up for questions. But do you have any last words you want to say to someone for whom change is really difficult?
Change is difficult. It is difficult, but remaining the same can be more harmful. So, and the question is, do you want to choose change or harm? I will choose change over harm any day of the week and twice on Sundays. It is about how that causes you to feel. And if it is not serving you, if it is not giving you peace and joy, and it's not even pointing you in that direction, then it's always worth trying to find some different way of doing this. And the other thing, too, I'll say, remember, different doesn't mean it's deficient at all. It just means different. It doesn't mean it's a better or worse path. It's a different path. It doesn't mean it's that there are better or worse people. They're just different people. Yeah. And often these changes can be what you need to feel the way that you're supposed to feel.
Yeah, that could open up a whole new conversation about resisting other people changing. And it's like, it's completely out of your control. But anyways, that's great. I'm going to throw it back to Kim. Kim, I think you're managing some questions. Wow, looks like you got a whole bunch already. So David, buckle in. We're going to see what we can answer here. Sure. Kim, do you want to throw out the first one?
Sure. You can see Slido's been quite busy because, Marianne and Dr. Daniel, such a powerful story and wonderful insights and lots of positive feedback here and definitely a lot of questions. So let's jump right into it. It looks like a lot of people loved the topic of our webinar today. What you don't change, you choose. I think that resonated a lot. First question, how do we approach a situation when we know it needs to change, but we don't know how it needs to be changed?
David, I'm going to let you take the lead on all of these. I'll only add if I feel there's something to add.
I'm happy to. So I heard once that work, that leadership, that all these things occur at 3 levels. There's a strategic level, a tactic level, and a task level. And often we get really buried at the how do I do it, and we don't figure out the why am I doing it. And I just think it's so important to figure that part out first, and the other part will come along. Why do I believe change is even necessary? Why? What is, why am I getting that sense that it needs to be a little bit different? Because once I can tap into that, the hows will come along. And also, I think there's a lot of value in relationships with other trusted sources of information about how. You may not know exactly what it is the circumstance I'm in, but you may know something about that topic. So if So if I, if I know I need to change, I know something needs to change, I'm not exactly sure how, that's when reaching out to my circle of trusted friends and confidants and sometimes, tossing something out on social media. Hey, does somebody have background in this area? There are ways to find out how. It's important that you know the why first.
I know you touched on the topic of family estrangement, and I think that goes with the next question of how do we approach people who are not supportive of the changes we know or want to make?
So there are a couple of lot of different theories of motivation. There's just one theory that suggests we have both an internal locus of control and an external locus of control. External is those who basically live their lives for other people's approval. The other is you do it because you believe it's the right thing to do. Both of them are important. They both are important. I tend to lean more towards the internal locus of control because that's what I can do something about. It's really difficult to live my life looking for everyone to support everything that I do. I just don't think they will. And that doesn't mean that they don't like me, don't love me, don't care about me, don't anything. It's they're living their life and I'm living mine. And a lot of folks will skip over what's going on with me to try to tell everybody else what to do. But the issue is really in the mirror. Why is this important for me to do? Why is this important for me to take this step? And once you're confident and comfortable in that, then how other people think and feel about it is less important. I'm not saying not important, but less important. We've got to be driven by what's going on inside us, what's going on in our perception, because if we try to live for other people, we'll never live at all.
No, I just want to add to that sometimes we need to let other people know I'm doing this, as David says, for my reasons. I love you, I care about you, whatever, but I need to do this. I remember saying to my son, who wanted me to stay responsible for him doing his homework, I said, I don't want to nag. It's not good for me, for my mental health. So you're going to suffer the consequences of doing or not doing your homework. And I just want you to know that.
Marianne, you were talking about perspective earlier on, and I think that's where this question comes from, or perspective. How can you change your thought patterns to accept the things we cannot change in our own work environment?
Well, the answer's in the question. You just have to understand you can't change it. So what's the point of resisting, raging? So then I say, okay, it is what it is. Do I want to live with it? Can I not live with it? Do I need to do something different? Or is there a way that I can deal with it to make it easier on myself? Yeah. When we talk to leaders about this, you have a change that's been imposed on you as a leader. You know your team hates it. But you say, rather than, those awful people at head office, you say, this is the change. We don't have a choice. Now let's talk about how we can make it easier for us.
Yes.
That's how it's not that you say, oh, this is lovely that we have to do these 12 extra forms. No, but how could we do this easier?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. At the risk, I am living currently in an environment that it was not of my choosing. I don't necessarily like everything that's going on. But the question is, how can I be at peace in the environment that I'm in? And if I can't, then the question is, why am I still here? That's at what point do you decide if it's really that bad, if it's really that harmful to you, then why are you still in it? Why are you still putting up with it? If you really don't, can't take anymore. We all have our limits of the things that we can even adapt to. So at a certain point, and Marianne, I think we went to the same, the same school of parenting, because I told my, kids the same thing. This is your life. I can't live it for you. I can't do it for you because I have a different way of seeing the world. And the same thing goes on at work. You can't, if you are the CEO, great. But even if you are, you have shareholders and boards of directors. We cannot control everything, but we can certainly know how things around us affect us. And those are the decisions that we can make.
Right.
All right, next question. How do you encourage change in your team? This is a team dynamic. When team members say, we've always done it this way, even if this way isn't effective.
I'm going to say that really is, that's about a culture. That's about a culture. There are ways to create a culture that is about innovation, that is about, and that starts, of course, with a culture that is psychologically healthy and safe for everybody. And that may start with a team lead, that could even start with members of the team, but somebody, and hopefully a group of people, have to decide that we want to have a culture where we're able to do what's effective. Because what's effective is more important than all the other stuff. Whether it doesn't matter that we did it this way 10 years ago. If profit is falling today, we need to fix that today. We can't retain people today. There are a lot of companies, a lot of organizations right now who are losing top talent because, well, we've always done it that way, but your people are leaving. Your profit margins are shrinking. So do you want to be effective? Or do you want to just do what you've always done? In relationship, I heard a while back, and I now repeat it. Do I want to be happy? Do I want to be right? So I'd rather be happy. So if that means I have to do a little different, I'd rather be happy. I'd rather be profitable. I'd rather be effective than simply do what I've always done.
Right. Understanding the importance to make positive changes for ourselves, for all the folks on the line here, but how should we approach a loved one when we believe they would benefit from a change?
I think that's difficult. I do. My
answer, David, is don't do it.
See, this is one of my the things that my mom told me, and this has been a few years ago. If you're going to be in relationship with people, you have to be in a relationship with them, the way they are, not the way you want them to be, the way they are. Same thing in the workplace. If we're going to hire people and bring them into, this, we have to hire people the way they are, not the way we want them to be, because that's why it rarely works. But they're this way. You said, it's going to be psychologically safe and people are going to bring their whole self. Well, some of their whole self is trauma. Some of their whole self is issues at home. Some of their whole self is they've got bills to pay and their dog's sick. And we have to, if it's going to be effective, I have to be in relationship with you the way that you are and accept the way you are. And if you're interested and if you need support from me and you're doing something, great. But I think we spend too much time trying to make other people something that they're not. And then we complain about how bad of a person they are when they don't do it my way. It works for me. It may not work for them. And that's okay.
Yeah. My thought to add to that is if they want something to be different,
yes,
then you can say, what would you like to be different? How do you think you can get there? But to tell someone that we believe they need to change is, usually not good for relationships.
It's not.
The next question is something I personally struggle with too. Carving out time to do the things, for example, training, learning tools. Dr. Daniels, you talked about, upskilling yourself that will bring change. Any advice that you have for folks where time is the issue?
I'm going to say that all resources are only an issue in the absence of value. Money, time, it's about what is valuable to you. And I find out what's valuable to you based on how you use the resource that you have. So it's hard for me people say, safety is important, but you don't spend any time doing safety related things. Training's important. You don't spend any. So that really isn't that important. I try to encourage people just to be honest about what's valuable to them and not say a bunch of stuff because you're checking a box. If you believe your skills are where they need to be, that's great. Now, but then on the other hand, it'd be difficult to kind of complain about the limitations on your skills. Pick one. And either one is fine. But to try to do both of them at the same time is not really all that effective. So it is important enough to me to do my own focus on upskilling that I'm going to do it regardless because I want to learn. I want to, I'm curious about things. I just want to learn more about that. So I'm going to find a way. I'll say this, I'll conclude. There's a poster behind my other desk. If it's important, you find a way. If it's not, you find an excuse.
Yeah. And just to, again, talk about the late, great Stephen Covey, he was part of a book called First Things First, and it's where you decide what matters and you decide what you're willing to invest in what matters.
Mm-hmm.
I think that leads into the next question around highlighting one or two specific skills or tools you use when preparing for a change and how they assisted you through the adjustments, kind of the working through the process of change that are being or have been made.
For me, the voyage of self, it all starts with self-discovery and self. I didn't meet myself until I was 26 years old. I didn't. I realized when I met myself, because before then I was just kind of doing what everybody told me to do. But once I met myself and started to understand it's a constant, understanding me because I continue to evolve. Once I get that figured out, understanding or being aware of the change around me is a lot easier to do because I know what works for me. And so I just try to connect what's going on inside me, what's going on around me, and how do those things connect? And the extent to which they do, I do them. And if they don't, I don't.
And I'll just share, there's a resource on our website, on the Workplace Strategies website called Explore Your Options. And it walks you through a process to deal with a change that's really difficult or very emotional.
Which I think really great segue, Marianne, because we're getting very close to the end of today's session, and I want to thank you. And we can move on to the resource page. So when you're looking for information and online resources to support choosing change and finding the motivation to see that change through, please check out the Workplace Strategies for Mental Health website. It's available to all Canadians at no cost, compliments of Canada Life. And we've also put together a list of resources referenced today in today's discussion seen here. You could scroll down on the webinar player page and click on download resource for the list of free tools and resources you can access. And as Marianne mentioned, if you would like to hear more from Dr. Daniels, we've included a link to his latest book on the event page, as well as at the bottom of the resource list. And the name of his book, because that was a question, is called Psychosocial Hazards Are Real. So this is all the time we have today, and we'd like to end by thanking Marianne and Dr. Daniels for their time, their insight, and expertise. We'd also like to thank you for taking the time to listen and contribute all your questions, your comments, your feedback, and we really hope you found today's session helpful. It will be recorded and available on our Workplace Strategies for Mental Health YouTube channel. So I want to thank you all, and we hope to see you for our next public event in October of 2025.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Daniels.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.